Well, that was an interesting game to end an interesting Sunday in the NFL. Welcome, football fans. It's Mitch here, back with another NFL weekly reaction, this time for week 10 of the 2024 NFL season. Spike the like button and don't forget to subscribe for weekly thoughts on every single game, every single Sunday for the rest of the NFL season. These are my thoughts about each and every game on Sunday without looking at the film, but just my quick grasp of each game and my takeaways at the heart, unfiltered, about each game. Let's go. Sunday Night Football. What a weird game. What a wild game. What a wacky game. 26-23, the Lions come back on the Houston Texans. There are takeaways for both of these teams that I think should be positive for both of these teams. First of all, both of these teams are good football teams. It's always hard if you're a team like the Lions that every week, and Lions fans may not understand this because they've never had this before, but the Lions are one of those teams now, believe it or not, especially down this stretch of the season, they are considered target on their back type of material. So anytime a team like the Lions plays on the road at a good team's place like the Texans, there's going to be a level of energy that you're going to have to overcome. You're going to have to outplay. Right? The Lions, 26, Texans 23. But it was not an easy victory for the Lions. It was probably their toughest victory of the season. They were down big at half. I believe it was 23-7 at half, and the Texans did not score a point for the rest of the game. Despite having opportunities, they did not score a point for the rest of the game. The entire second half. Stroud and the Texans offensively in the first half looked pretty good. Their defense was dominant against one of the top offenses in football. And they were looking like the team that we thought they would be entering the season. But entering the game, I think a lot of people, and including the entire Sunday Night Football panel, picked the Texans to lose. They picked the Lions, like every single one of them. Why? There was no Nico Collins. There was no Will Anderson. There's others like Christian Harris, Mario Edwards, some other players that will contribute down the line for the Texans. We'll get into that are important to the Texans. But the main pieces, Will Anderson, one of the best top 10 edge rushers in the league. Nico Collins, probably the third best receiver in the NFL. Both out for the Texans. So everyone thought this would be a rollover. This would be easy. This would be a dub. Walk in there, get it done, Lions. Piece of cake. That was not the case at all. The Texans defense caused and dominated Jared Goff. I would say all the way through the game. Like Jared Goff himself, even in the second half, didn't have a good game. Like first half, it was awful. Second half, it was a little bit better just because he didn't make as many mistakes, but he still made a mistake. And it wasn't that much better. Like really, the Lions just started running the ball a bit better. They threw some screens. Like he made a couple throws. That was about it. And because of the balance, because of the play action, because of the screens, he was more confident and he had better protection in that second half. And Lassiter also got injured for the Texans in this game, one of their top two corners, which also allowed the Lions to have a little bit more success, I think, through the air as well. So that was a key factor. But I will say that there's good for both teams. So listen, first of all, when you've got that target on the back, you're the Lions, right? Every team's going to give you the best punch possible, even if they're missing Nico Collins and Will Anderson. You're in Houston. You're playing a team that thinks they're a contender, the Texans. You're playing a well-coached football team off 10 days of rest. You're playing a team on Sunday Night Football in their building that's going to be fired up with great talent across the board. They're not going to go down easy. And they beat your butt for a half. But what the Lions proved to us is they could come back against a objectively good football team in their building in a primetime game where the entire world is watching against a good quarterback on the other side, and they were able to win that game. Yeah, they came back a couple times last year, I think. They beat the Bears in a comeback, right? Like, the Bears, not a good team, the Bears, okay? I think they came back against the Bears last year. Lions fans, help me out with the comebacks from last season. I don't think they beat a team in this type of spot, and I don't think they've ever had a win like this in the Lions era under Dan Campbell. Against a good team, multiple games above 500, good quarterback on Sunday Night Football, down by multiple scores at the half. I don't think they've ever won this type of game. Now, last week we spoke about how they were able to win in the rain, win in mucky conditions, beat a Packers team that we think is pretty talented, explosive, at Lambeau Field, a division rival that knows you well. You're able to play that type of mucky football, gritty football, get it done, and not only get it done, but actually dominate that game. Now, this was not domination. This was far from it on the Lions' part. But they were able to win a game that they haven't really proven they can win. So check another win, comeback win for the Lions. Was it a conventional Tom Brady throw it 60 times for 400 yards comeback? No. Was it Patrick Mahomes running around for 300 total yards and 4 touchdowns and scrambling and making crazy throws that no one's seen before? Type of comeback? No. Jared Goff only ended up with 240 passing yards. It was not a conventional comeback, but their defense kept them in the game, and the Lions just chipped away, and their kicker, Bates, came through with 2 absolutely fluky but clutch field goals, 58 yards and 52 yards. Both of the kicks were this close to missing. It was, if his name was Moody, he would have missed. We'll get to that later. But there's also good to talk about with the Texans. Like, the Texans were dominating Detroit, a team that I have number 1 in my power rankings, and I think I'll still have number 1 in my power rankings, despite the Chiefs being undefeated, because the Chiefs should have lost today too, right? Like, the Lions won, they should have lost probably, in most people's opinion. But I actually think the Lions might have been more convincing than the Chiefs, which is crazy. And then the Chiefs, we'll talk about that game as well. So teams are close to losing today. Like, the Niners could have lost. There was a lot of teams that could have lost today, but they didn't, right? And I think for the Texans, their defense looked fantastic for most of this game, if not all of this game. Sure, they gave up some points at the end of the game, but I mean, that's going to happen. You're playing the Lions. They didn't have Will Anderson. They lost Lassiter during the game. They still don't have Christian Harris, who is one of their starting linebackers. He was an excellent player last year for them. He hasn't played all season. And they don't have Mario Edwards, who was a key, interior defensive line pass rusher, who, alongside Autry and Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, would be a dominant front four in passing situations. And I thought the Texans actually kind of showcased a game plan against the Lions that I think is pretty interesting moving forward. And I also felt like the Texans kind of showed the blueprint for how they can become a contender. So first of all, I thought their offensive line did play a bit better in this game. I understand that they're playing the Lions pass rush without Aiden Hutchinson. He's out for the year. No Zadarius Smith for this game. He sat this game. So it wasn't the best pass rush or the best opponent. They still gave up plenty of pressure, plenty of sacks, and plenty of tough throws for CJ Stroud. But it did look a little bit better up front for the Texans, at least during the first half. And they were a little bit more efficient, and they understand kind of the assignment. They knew what they wanted to do. They knew what they wanted to be. And they were on schedule in the first half, and they were kind of, throwing the ball on time, making plays, running it a little bit. And Stroud was kind of dealing out there. In the second half, they couldn't run the ball. They couldn't sustain drives. They couldn't pick up the first downs when they needed it. The refs didn't necessarily help on that 3rd and 4 where Arnold clearly interfered on the wide receiver. I believe it was Hutchinson, would have set the Texans up with a first down, and they likely go on to win the game and kick a field goal at that point. Instead, they have to kick a super long 58-yard field goal or something like that, and they end up missing because of a high snap. It takes the kick way off to the left. That's how the Lions got the last possession and the field goal for the win. So, yeah, the refs didn't help them in that situation. But the Texans were severely outplayed in the second half. Like, their offense just couldn't move the ball when they needed to. They couldn't really do anything when they needed to. Bobby Slowick, once again, put on a show of how not to be an offensive coordinator. Brutal. Their receivers, again, very underwhelming. I thought Tank Dell had some moments, but, again, a little underwhelming compared to what we expect from him. Hutchinson is just not good. Robert Woods is just old. Dalton Schultz can't separate. And really, the only guy I thought played well for the Texans offensively was John Mechie. 5 catches, 74 yards, and a touchdown. He should just play more. I don't understand why he doesn't play more. He was actually beating man coverage occasionally, making some big third down plays, scored the touchdown from Stroud. I would also look at the Texans and say their formula for moving forward, they kind of showcased it to us. It's having a top 5 defense, which at times this season they have had a top 5 defense. Like, if I were to just look up the Texans right now, the Texans, look at what they did against the Bills at home earlier this year. Look at what they did in this game, right? Like, they've showcased against good opponents, good offenses. They're capable of going toe-to-toe. They rank second in yards in the NFL defensively. They rank first in time of possession allowed, first in plays allowed, second in yards per drive allowed. The only thing they really suck at is points. Points in terms of 15th, and their average in this category, 15th in points per drive, 14th overall in points allowed. They're actually underwhelming against the run, which I think has something to do with the health of Al-Shaair, who had a phenomenal game today. They're actually also first in net yards per attempt through the air. So they're a very good pass defense. They've only allowed 150 first downs, which is also third in the NFL. Now, they have played a little bit of a weaker schedule, but they did play the Vikings. They did play Trevor Lawrence and the Jags. They did play with all their playmakers. They played the Bills. They played Drake May's Patriots, who actually moved the ball a little bit against them. They played the Packers, and they played well in that game. They played the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, and they played now the Lions. But I think the Texans have shown, even without all their personnel defensively, they're certainly a top 5 defense. They probably have a top 3 pass rush. I think their scheme is top-notch. Their run defense is a bit spotty, but it feels like when they face a challenge like the Lions, they typically rise to the challenge. Like, Jahmyr Gibbs had 3.7 yards per carry on 19 carries. That typically does not happen for Jahmyr Gibbs. 71 yards, 3.7 yards per carry for Jahmyr Gibbs is like low, like career low type stuff. Like, he does not have those numbers. David Montgomery didn't shine in this game. Like, they held those guys in check. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he did have a touchdown on a screen. He did convert that late third down to put them into field goal range. He did have some plays, but overall he didn't like have a huge game. Sam Laporta actually had one of his better games this year. He's been very quiet this year. He had 3 for 66 and a touchdown. He gave up, they gave up a big touchdown to him down the field, but overall he wasn't like shining against them. So none of the Lions' weapons really went off in this game, which also tells you about the Lions in this game. But again, getting back to the Texans formula, I realize, guys, I'm kind of all over the map here in terms of what I'm trying to say, but this is kind of how this show goes, and it just goes as my brain reacts to it, okay? But their formula is defense is top 5, I think for certain. Once they get all their players back, they've shown against top-notch offenses they can perform at an elite level and hold them around 24 to 20 points in that range, okay? Their pass rush is awesome. Their special teams, their kicker is usually very good. Okay, their kicker has been mostly very good all year. The last couple of weeks, he's actually been his worst all season. Their returns aren't bad. Their offense, though, is very reliant on Stroud, Nico Collins, especially Nico Collins, Joe Mixon, and Tank Dell. And when that mixture is not on the field, they do suffer. And they're not a good offense when they don't have those pieces on the field. That's just facts. Like I said, I think they need to involve John Mechie more, but we saw them play the Jets defense that just got exposed by the Cardinals. They're not a good offense when they don't have those playmakers out there. And Nico Collins, like we said, top 3 receiver in the league. When he comes back, that's going to change some things, right? The Texans also had 0 sacks in this game, but still forced 5 interceptions, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. The Lions had 4 sacks in this game. The Lions had 5 interceptions and 4 punts. That's pretty rare. That doesn't happen, okay? That doesn't happen to the Lions. So I think the Lions formula is, the Lions formula we know, sorry. The Texans formula is top 5 defense, especially against the pass, they're elite. Offense, explosive passing game, explosive running game. They may be inconsistent, but they've got a quarterback that gives them a shot. They've got Nico Collins. They've got Tank Dell. They've got Joe Mixon. And then all those other playmakers that they want to involve, like Dalton Schultz, like Robert Woods or whatever, they'll add their little touch to the offense. They're not having to be priorities within the week-to-week game plan, okay? So I actually view this Texans game as pretty impressive. Because when you think about it, they didn't have 2 of their top 4 best players. And they were playing the best team in the NFL. And they could have won this game pretty easily, right? They forced 5 interceptions from Jared Goff. He's barely been throwing 5 incompletions in a game, never mind 5 interceptions. Okay, he was 15 for 30 in this game. That just speaks to how well the Texans were in coverage and up front. And they didn't get a lot of sacks, but they definitely got pressure. There was moments, especially in the first half, they got pressure and they forced those interceptions. A couple were a little bit spotty. One was a Hail Mary. One was like an arm punt. He just chucked the ball deep for no reason, which was a little odd. But, you know, the Texans continue offensively with their bad play calling from Bobby Slowick. Joe Mixon, 25 carries, 46 yards, is stellar by the Detroit defensive front. They knew that was the goal of this game. If Nico Collins was not going to play, they needed to stop Joe Mixon, and they did it. 25 carries, 46 yards. When you stop the run like that, it extends the game. It allows an offense to not be effective on first down, not effective on second down. It makes CJ Stroud constantly have to perform from third down, from third and long, from second and long. That's difficult for a quarterback, any quarterback in this league, especially one with the offensive line deficiencies and the pass blocking deficiencies that they do have. And like I said, I thought moving Scruggs to left guard was actually a good idea. I thought plugging in Patterson at center actually helped the offensive line. Like, I thought the offensive line, if anything, was better than usual, which speaks volumes. But the Lions also on the back end, they played incredibly aggressive, and early it wasn't really paying off. In the second half, there were not a lot of flags. There was not a lot of holding called. There was not a lot of pass interference calls. I mean, if I look at the penalty stats, what were the penalty stats? 4 penalties for the Texans for 30 yards and 4 penalties for 61 yards on the Lions. Like, 4 penalties each. For a Sunday night, Thursday night, Monday night game, that's not a lot. For the Texans to hold the Lions only 27 minutes of possession. Again, impressive. Like, I think the Texans showcased that against elite teams, if they're healthy, they have Nico, they have Anderson, they have Harris down the stretch. If this defense continues to improve, and this offense can just block a tad bit better, and they have Nico Collins to beat man coverage against a team like Detroit that loves to play man coverage. Because when you saw Detroit, it was smart to play the way Detroit plays. Carlton Davis had an amazing game. He had 2 interceptions, right? I thought Campbell had an excellent game. My guy, finally showing up this season. He's had a breakout season this year. I loved him coming out of the draft. It's really nice to see him play well this year because last year he did not play that well, especially in coverage. I thought that Arnold, once again, didn't have a great game. Like, the big plays that the Texans did make, they made it against Arnold. And I'll continue to have these Lions fans in the chat saying that Arnold is actually good, when in fact he should have got called for a PI at the end of the game that should have set the Texans up with a kick for the win. But regardless of that, he's going to be a factor at the end of the day. Okay, he's going to be a factor in the playoffs. This Arnold guy, he's going to be a factor. Branch had a great game. McNeil had a good game for the Lions. Just going through the guys I thought played well. Al-Shaair played very well. I thought that Danico Autry showed up early in the game. Actually, I thought that Hunter was pretty quiet. Hunter did not have a great game. Stingley, I didn't really notice very much. Jamison Williams had some plays early, but not really later in the game. I'm not sure if he ended up leaving. He did get hurt at one point. St. Brown, like I said, was kind of quiet. He did have a touchdown. Jared Goff was awful in this game. Awful for like 99% of it. Stroud was up and down. I thought early on he was really good, and I thought later on he was really tough. He just couldn't find anything available. He was getting pressured. The coverage was tight. Nobody was really open. Even on the replays, you could see nobody was open. I thought their receivers, Hutchinson, Woods, these depth guys really struggled. Really struggled. Even Tank Dell, to a certain degree, struggled. Joe Mixon did not have his best game. I thought in the first half he had some nice moments, especially their first touchdown drive, but beyond that, it wasn't great for him. It wasn't a great day for him. This was a lot more of a defensive struggle than I think the score would suggest at 26-23. There was a lot of interceptions, though, which also caused some of the short fields and some of the scores to happen. There were 7 picks in this game. 7. 1 in the end zone by Stroud, 1 by Goff in the end zone. So 2 that could have taken away 2 potential touchdowns. The one for the Texans would have been huge. If Stroud doesn't throw that interception in the end zone to Carlton Davis, where Davis kind of runs across the field and covers a guy he's not covering in the end zone and makes that alert play, they probably win that game. The Texans probably win if they have that one more touchdown, right? If they're able to get to 30, they probably win this game. But Carlton Davis played fantastic, I thought. Even in the plays that he didn't make interceptions, I thought he played really well. So those are the guys that kind of stand out to me. But that was Sunday Night Football, man, and I learned a lot about both teams. I think we learned that the Lions, offensively, they definitely struggled with the Texans' aggressive game plan. It was very much like how the Lions actually play. Like, the Texans played more man coverage against the Lions than I've seen many other teams play. The Texans blitzed Goff situationally a lot more than I've seen teams blitz Goff. And behind the blitz, they played man, not zone, which is something to understand, okay? Like, Flores played blitz, but zone a lot. That didn't really work because Goff knew where to go with the ball and had answers. If you play a little bit more man blitz, I think that's the way to go if you have a little bit of matchups out there. And the Texans were geared up to stop the run, which is obviously task number uno against the Lions, which is also why I don't think Jared Goff is MVP material, because everything about the Lions' offense begins and ends with the run game. If they're able to run the ball, they're going to score 40. If they're not able to run the ball, they might score 25, 24, 27, right? So that was Sunday Night Football, man. That's kind of my thoughts. I think the Texans, they feel like a team that will continue to rise up, and I think this was just an indication that they can go toe-to-toe with a really good football team. And I realize I've spent about 25 minutes on this game, but I think it was warranted. Those are my thoughts on the Lions and Texans. Impressive comeback for the Lions. Impressive showing for the Texans considering the circumstances. Texans cover, Lions win. Speaking of covering and winning, we were great on Patreon this week, guys. If you're not on Patreon, man, we've been cooking. Last 2 weeks, we've been doing really well. Our best bets have been cooking. Our teasers hit, cooking. I mean, we might have got like 2 bets out of 10 wrong. We were hitting at like an 80% clip. Our best bets, killing the game. So if you're not on Patreon, guys, it's $10 a month to sign up to Patreon. I'll put the link in the description. That's where I release all my bets each and every week. The last couple of weeks, man, we're doing really, really well. Speaking about a game that we went 4-1 on the channel on our spread picks, best bets. So pretty good. The game that we didn't cover on was the 49ers and Bucks, which is a game that I really want to cover here because I think it's a little bit misconstrued as to what happened. I think the score does not indicate what took place. And I also kind of want to go over the good for the Bucks, the good for the Niners, the bad for the Niners, the bad for the Bucks. The Niners come out victorious, though, in a much-needed win off of the bye. They're now 5-4. They will play Seattle at home next week to get to 6-4. The Bucks are 4-6, which was a huge loss for them. The last 2 weeks have been brutal, like absolutely tough, man. Last week, they lose in overtime on Monday night to the Chiefs. And they suffer a similar fate to the Niners. They lose at the end of the game by a game-winning field goal to San Francisco. Although I thought the Bucs actually outplayed the Chiefs last week and they lost. And I thought this week they got severely outplayed a majority of the game and they barely lost 23-20 to the 49ers. But they did not really deserve to be this close. Okay, and we'll just go over the stats first. First of all, Niners had 24 first downs. The Bucs had 18. The Niners were 5 for 11 on third down. The Bucs were 5 for 14. The Bucs did convert a fourth down miracle play, which was one of the best plays I've seen all season by Baker Mayfield, with Nick Bosa holding on to his left arm the entire play, which I don't know why he didn't make more of an effort to bring him down. Some people may say that it's because Baker Mayfield and Nick Bosa may have voted for the same guy, if you know what I'm saying. So there was something there between Bosa and Baker. Just throwing that out there. Although, Nick Bosa also came out with a little sack dance to indicate who I'm talking about. Not trying to get political, just throwing that out there. It's a funny joke. But the Niners also had 200 more yards in this game than the Bucs. 200. 413 yards to 215 yards. It's actually a minor miracle that this game was as close as it was. The Niners did have only 2 sacks to the Bucs 3. So I guess that's a category that the Bucs did win. But the Niners punted once in this game, one time, and they won by 3, and they only scored 23 points. The Bucs punted 6 times. Penalties were also 5 for 42 for Tampa, 6 for 49 for the Niners, but a majority of the Niners penalties came on that final drive for Tampa. I think they had 3 personal fouls in one drive for first downs on like third down. So that was pretty crazy. A couple of them were like face masks. One of them was like a hit to the head. The face masks were just bad plays by the Niners. Like not uncharacteristic, I wouldn't call it, but just not smart plays. They need to fix that. They need to be better than that. A little bit lazy, in my opinion. The Niners also outpossessed the Bucs. So looking at the box score, it's pretty clear the Niners should have won this game and did win this game, and luckily they did, because they've lost a couple games this year against the Rams and the Cardinals where this box score basically took place. Like, they totally dominated the game statistically. They just did not come out on top. Now, what's been the clear, identifiable miss for the Niners? Well, today it was the field goal kicker. He missed 3 times. Jake Moody missed a kick 3 times, so that's 9 points. The Niners also muffed a punt inside their own 20, being conservative, might have been their own 15-yard line. They muffed a punt that gave the Bucs a touchdown, which was their first touchdown of the day to Rachaad White, I believe. So that is right there 16 points that the Niners gave to the Bucs. 16 points on the road in Tampa, West Coast to East Coast. Okay. And they still won the game. So on one hand, pretty impressive that they were able to win the game like that. But at the same time, and I don't think there were any turnovers in this game besides the fumble punt. I don't think so. There are no interceptions by either quarterback. I thought both quarterbacks, Baker, I actually thought played pretty well considering who he has on his team. But he only had 116 yards. And a lot of them were like quick throws, like quick underneath throws, threading the needle on passes to Cade Otton. He had 5 catches for 35 yards, throwing quick outs to Sterling Shepard, throwing swing passes to Rachaad White and Bucky Irving. Like, the Niners defense from a traditional drop back pass perspective was like one of the best defenses I've seen all day. They were very good in this game from a drop back pass perspective. From a run defense perspective, Bucky Irving gave them some fits. He had 13 carries for 73 yards, 5.6 yards per carry. I think White had close to the same amount of work, but he only averaged like 2 yards a carry. So whenever White got the ball, they stopped him for like nothing. But then Irving got the ball and he had success. So the Niners' run defense has been a bit up and down all year. White, good defense. Irving, not as good defense. I would also say that Purdy statistically had a great day, 25 for 36, 353, and 2 touchdowns. He also had a couple scrambles. And he made an incredible throw to Kittle for a touchdown. He made an incredible throw under pressure to Christian McCaffrey on a wheel route on a big drive near the end of the game. But I overall didn't actually think Purdy played that well. Like, I wasn't blown away by him. I thought he missed some throws early. I thought he was kind of inaccurate at times, like with ball placement and where it needed to go. I thought he missed a couple open guys. At the same time, though, this offense is so well schemed that it still gives you so many opportunities to make plays. And that's why Purdy still had 353 yards, including some catch and runs by Kittle, who I thought had a great game here. He had a touchdown, incredible catch in the end zone, double toe tap, a big long one down the middle of the field. Ricky Pearsall played fantastic in this game. I know that he was, almost out of commission before the season started, but he really, really resurrected himself here. 4 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown, and he had 2 critical catches on the game-winning drive as well. McCaffrey, I think this was the story of the game for the Bucs defense. They did a great job against McCaffrey. He only had 3 yards a carry on 13 carries, 39 yards, but he did have 6 catches for 70 yards. So McCaffrey was really good as a receiver, which was nice to see. I thought overall as a player, he still looked shifty, quick, and explosive, which was a good sign. But I thought running the ball, there was just nowhere to really run it. I thought the Bucs did a great job there. And the last 2 weeks, they've been playing well against the run for the most part, against the Chiefs and now the Niners. And this is a Bucs offense. Remember that with the same personnel here, they did lose Tristan Wirfs, I think, in the third quarter or the end of the second, which was big. That threw a wrench into things from, that drop back pass situation where they were just constantly throwing screens near the end of the game where they were actually kind of working, but that was kind of their only offense that was really working. That's why that last drive was pretty much a fluke, because they just kept getting first down after first down after first down via penalty. But I would say that the Bucs, remember, this Bucs offense is legit. Like, they're a good offense. I know they don't have Evans, and I know they don't have Godwin, but they scored. They moved the ball against the Chiefs, who might be the best defense in the league. Okay, we'll talk about the Chiefs a little bit later. But this, again, I thought the Niners defense, considering the opponent, the task, I thought they played actually really well. I thought the Niners offense played well. I think where they're struggling is they can't kick. They missed, that's 9 points. The red zone offense, I thought, was a little bit spotty. I thought the Bucs did a great job in the red zone defensively, and especially with pressure. I thought early in the game they got pressure, they got sacks, they forced some long situations, and that's where Purdy was just a little bit off, I thought, early in the game. And maybe that had to do with the bye week coming out a little bit slow, but he came up clutch when he needed to on that fourth quarter drive to win the game, to set up Moody for the game-winning kick, who ended up going 2 for 5 on field goals with a game-winning field goal to tack on. And Purdy hit Jawan Jennings on a big play where he made a man miss and he got extra yards. He hit Ricky Pearsall for a first down. So that was a good drive by Purdy, definitely. I would say, though, this was overall, despite the score and not being able to cover, I thought the Niners were pretty impressive overall in the game, considering they made a lot of mistakes. Now, hopefully, if you're a Niners fan, you can just say, hopefully our special teams, because when you look at their special teams today, it was mostly to do with kicking, which is fixable if the kicker kicks better, and that's individual, right? That's not special teams, that's individual. It's not like all the kicks were blocked. It was they missed the kick. Then they muffed a punt by the returner individually. So that's not really special teams to me. That's more so individuals. If they can fix that somehow, I think this would have been a result where it was a lot more impressive. It probably would have been like 34-20 instead of 23-20. All right, so this was a little bit misleading, but the Niners were still able to come through despite all of the potential fights on the sidelines. Deebo Samuel punched the long snapper in the face because they couldn't kick the ball. There was a lot going on with the Niners, but they continued to fight all the way down to the end, and they came with the win. I also thought that, again, I like the mix of Jawan Jennings, a little bit of Deebo, who was actually a little bit underwhelming for his standard. I think he had like 60 yards in this game. A little bit of Deebo. Jawan Jennings played great. Ricky Pearsall looks like a player. Christian McCaffrey. If that's the mix for the Niners, and Kittle, I think the Niners have an offense for sure. The defense, I think, is better than last year. I do. I actually do think this is a better defense than last year. I think this offense is worse for sure because they don't have Ayuk. But with McCaffrey continuing to play, I think they can trend towards, they're definitely top 5. I would say they could trend towards top 3. But their special teams is just brutal right now. Like, they need to be a lot better on special teams. So 23-20 Niners. Bucs are in a tough spot. We'll see if they can, bounce back. I think the Bucs now have a bye week, which is going to be good for them. But hey, don't rule the Bucs out. Why? Because the Falcons just lost a game. They lost to the Saints 20-17 somehow. The Saints are now 3-7 and the Falcons 6-4. Brutal loss for the Falcons, considering the Falcons had 11 more first downs than the Saints. And this is exactly reflecting what we just talked about with the Niners. The Falcons lost a Niner game. How'd the Niners lose? The Falcons missed 3 field goals. I believe one of them was blocked, if not 2. They had 11 more first downs than New Orleans. New Orleans had 14 first downs. The Falcons had 25. Okay. Third down, they were identical. Fourth down, Atlanta was 1 for 2. They failed on the last fourth down of the game. They outrushed the Saints, which is rare. Like, you outrush a team by 90 yards and you put up 181 rushing yards and you still lose to a bad team. That's pretty embarrassing. 468 yards for the Falcons, 365 for the Saints. Saints did have 3 sacks. Falcons, once again, had 0. Falcons did throw a pick. Saints did not. Falcons only punted 3 times. Saints punted 5 times. And the Falcons also had 11 more minutes of possession, 35-24. So pretty embarrassing result for the Falcons considering how much they outplayed the Saints, but that typically does happen in divisional games at times. Cousins had over 300 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. Derek Carr had a nice game, 16 for 25, 269 and 2. And the thing I could say about Carr is he was finding new targets like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, 3 catches, 109 yards, and 2 touchdowns, who is kind of stuck in oblivion with the Buffalo Bills. He comes out to the Saints. He makes some plays. He scores a long touchdown, 40 yards out. Drake London was playing. I actually didn't even know he was playing this week. He still put up a good game, and the Falcons still lost. And Bijan continues to be maybe the most consistent fantasy asset in fantasy football. He's put up over 20 fantasy points 5 weeks in a row. This week, 20 carries, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 116 yards, and 5.8 yards per carry. He is in that top 3 running back discussion in real life, in my opinion. With McCaffrey and Derrick Henry, I would say that, and this was kind of a fluky loss, but I think the Falcons were kind of due for something like this, just because, I don't think their defense is very good. I think that they're too reliant on their offense to score. And when they don't come through, you lose 9 points to miss field goals. That's going to lose you a game. Like we just talked about with the Niners. Like somehow the Niners won despite basically giving the Bucs 16 points, right? So the Lions somehow survived. It's like we talk about. And the Falcons didn't really turn it over that often. So they kept it close. It felt like they were going to ultimately come back here, but the Saints were just able to put it off. 2 touchdowns from Valdez-Scantling, and Younghoe Koo had a nightmare of a game, and the Saints win. There's not much else to say other than this was one of those spots, as a bettor. This is what we could take away, right? This was a new coach spot. This was a new coach boost. This was 4.5 at home with a division rival with the new coach boost. This is almost an automatic bet. And yet, the Saints get completely outplayed, and they win. And this is almost the inverse of the last time these teams played. The Saints outplayed the Falcons last time they played. But because the Falcons had 2 defensive touchdowns, the Saints lost. So this was almost comeuppance. This was karma. The Falcons lose a game, and they're a pretender to me. I think they will win their division just because of where the Bucs are at. I wouldn't rule the Bucs out because I think Liam Cohen right now, I want him to be the future Patriots coach next year because I think his scheme on offense is awesome. I think Baker is playing unbelievable this year. He's playing like a top 7 quarterback in the league, in my opinion. Which, by the way, guys, I'll be ranking my top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL Monday night on Bleacher Report. I'll also post that on YouTube later on. But make sure to follow me on Bleacher Report if you guys aren't already. That being said, just looking at the Bucs schedule. So they play, after the bye, they play the Giants They play the Panthers, the Raiders. That should be 3 wins in a row. Then they play the Chargers, which will be tough, but maybe they get Mike Evans back by then. Dallas, that should be another win. Carolina, New Orleans. I don't know, guys. The Bucs might be able to do this. Like, if they can go on a run, I mean, the way Baker's playing, I would favor them in all those games except for maybe at the Chargers. They should win like almost all of those games. Carolina twice could get a little tricky, right? Carolina's playing better ball right now, which we should get to. But they're 4-6. If they can get a little run going, they could maybe take the division right from under the Falcons. The Falcons are at 6-4. Let's check out the Falcons schedule. I know that their schedule is also pretty easy. Let's check this out. Let's just see for ourselves. So they play at Denver next week, which could be another loss. They play the Chargers still, just like the Bucs do. Okay. But that one's at home. They play at Minnesota. That is not an easy game. They play at the Raiders, which that's on a primetime game, though. That's interesting. They play the Giants, which they should win. Right? They're 2 games ahead, and they won both games against the Bucs, which is huge. And that's basically the difference between their records right now. Like, they're 4-4 against the rest of the league, right? So, and then they play at Washington. Atlanta plays at Washington. So Atlanta has a tougher schedule. Atlanta plays at Denver, at Washington, at Minnesota, and the Chargers. They could probably lose 3 out of those 4 games. Probably. The way they're playing. So, I don't know. Like, I think that's a lot more up for discussion than people think. I'm just going to throw that out there. Yeah, the Bucs probably should have won last week. I will say that. Okay, let's get to the game in Germany. I didn't watch too much of this game. I'm not going to lie. It was a pretty putrid game, like just from in terms of like who was playing, the Giants and the Panthers. The Giants probably should have won this game. They had 9 more first downs. They were just as efficient on third down, but they fell behind very early in the game. It was 10-0 going into halftime for the Panthers. And Daniel Jones was awful in the first half. Awful. Terrible. Couldn't make a throw. Couldn't do anything. Chuba Hubbard was great. 28 carries, 153 yards. One of the best players of the week. He did fumble once, I believe, but he also had a touchdown in the game. And he didn't fumble at the critical time, which Tyrone Tracy did in overtime. Despite me loving the kid, he put the team in the spot to lose, right? He had 103 yards, 5.7 yards per carry. He did have another touchdown. He did have another great game, but he did fumble in overtime to set up the Panthers for the easiest overtime win you've ever seen. Fumble on the first play of the game in overtime, and the Panthers basically just set up the kick for the field goal, and they win. So that was pretty, lackluster ending. But both teams kind of had an interesting script. Like, Carolina only had 118 passing yards. Bryce Young only had 15 completions, but he didn't make the critical mistake. Daniel Jones had 2 interceptions in the game, and they fumbled it as well. Turnover battle basically won the Panthers this game. 3 turnovers to 1, I believe. Or maybe 2. 1. Just the fumble, I think. So I'm a little shocked because I think the Panthers are the better. The Panthers are the far worse team. The Giants are the better team on paper, in my opinion. And they still found a way to win, despite having 10 penalties in the game, less first downs in the game. I think if Tracy doesn't fumble the ball on that first play of overtime, the Giants probably win. But that's the way it goes sometimes. I just think this was a game the Panthers were kind of meant to win. It just kind of felt that way while watching it. And I got to give Bryce some credit. I'm itchy everywhere, bro. Like, I mean, itchy on my elbow. I'm itchy on my nose, bro. I'm itchy, like, everywhere. What the heck is going on? I don't know. Maybe I'm itchy from those dubs I had on Patreon. My goodness. Check out Patreon. Link in the description. 2017, the Panthers win it. Nothing else has to be said. Credit to Bryce Young, man. Good on Bryce Young. Like, yeah, I don't hate the kid, believe it or not. I don't hate the kid. Good job. Also, Chuba Hubbard. Oh, Canada. Him and John Mechie showing up big time. You know who also showed up big time? The Chiefs special teams carrying Patrick Mahomes to another victory. 16-14. Chiefs take it over the Broncos despite Probably should have lost. Not going to lie. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen a team set up a game-winning field goal from 35 yards out and lose. I don't know how many games you've seen this year, last year, the year before that. I don't recall a single game in recent memory where a team set up a 35-yard field goal for the win and lost. I can't remember one. I can't remember a kicker missing from that short. I can't remember a block kick. I can't remember a fumbled snap Tony Romo. Like, I legitimately cannot remember a team losing a game where they could win it on a game-winning field goal. And this was an interesting game. This, I thought, would be a close game, right? We took the points on our picks this week. I should have made it a best bet. I'm not going to lie, but I got a little bit scared because of the Broncos' offense, and I was a little bit scared about the ability to move the ball consistently. But I will say, I think the Chiefs' defense has been giving up a little bit more than I think they've been giving up. Like, the Bucs game and the Broncos game had a similar vibe to it against the Chiefs' defense, where these two offenses were kind of matriculating the ball down the field. They did have hit a big touchdown to Courtland Sutton where he burnt Trent McDuffie for a long touchdown down the left sideline on a 3rd and 1. Bo Nix play action, hit Sutton for a 32-yard touchdown, no safety help. McDuffie one-on-one with Sutton just got beat, period. But a lot of the drives for the Broncos were kind of like matriculating a run here, a screen there, a quick pass here, a swing pass. Like, kind of how the Bills attacked the Chiefs in the playoffs last year in the divisional round. It was like, and how every team attacks the Niners this year. Like, it's just like 3 yards, 4 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards. That's basically how the Broncos attacked the Chiefs. And that's kind of how their offense is anyways. But I actually thought Bo Nix had maybe the best game I've ever seen him play. Like, I will give Bo Nix a lot of credit. I am not going to hate on Bo Nix in this game. I thought he actually played pretty darn well. He didn't make any mistakes. He did take some sacks, maybe some bad sacks at times, but 22 for 30, 215, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He made a nice deep ball to Courtland Sutton. He made some nice 3rd down throws. He set up a 3rd down throw to get to that field goal range. Was it Sutton against McDuffie again? I think it was, to get into that range. I thought he was good. He avoided a lot of negative plays. He knew when to kind of throw it away. I thought Nix actually had maybe the best game I've ever seen him play at the NFL level, because I think a lot of his good performances have been extremely overrated, and mostly against bad opponents. This was against one of the best defenses, if not, in my opinion, the best defense in the league. I think the Chiefs had the best defense in the league. I think that's the reason they're undefeated. They might also have the best special teams. Their kicker never misses, and they block a game-winning field goal. So there you go. But Bo Nix played great. He deserved to win this game. Patrick Mahomes, meanwhile, 28 for 42, 266, 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions. I thought he played all right. I didn't think he was, like, amazing, but he did make some really nice plays. I thought there was one scramble drill play where he escaped a sack on the right side, and then he hit a receiver down the field. I think it was it Kelsey? For a first down? I can't remember who he hit. Maybe DeAndre? I don't know. But Mahomes was suffocated by pressure for majority of the day. You know, I thought that the Broncos got really good pressure on the edges. They collapsed the pocket really well. They didn't really allow Mahomes to scramble that much. And when he did, they kind of tackled him relatively quickly. I thought the Broncos defense played pretty darn solid. Now, there was a couple opportunities in the game for them to really take this game, like a 4th and goal at the 2-yard line. The Chiefs score to Travis Kelce, who, by the way, had a pretty good game here. He looked more like prime Kelce with the 8 catches, 64 yards, and a touchdown. But he also had, he just moved a little bit better than he's been moving, in my opinion. DeAndre Hopkins was less of a factor, but he did have a couple big catches in the game. Couple 3rd downs, a big one on 3rd down against the blitz where he kind of ran like a out route, but it was kind of like a curved one. I don't know how to explain it, but it was kind of like a tricky out route, let's just say. and he caught it against the blitz, and Mahomes kind of just threw it into a spot, and D-Hop kind of turned around and caught it. That was a big play in the game. Both teams went 7 first downs on third down. Chiefs actually didn't totally outperform their opponent on third down in this game, which I think is basically where the Broncos could have won the game, right? The Chiefs, they actually failed on third down 9 times. Usually this is a team that's hitting on third down like 70%. Like they're like unreal on third down because they set themselves up so well on first and second. They're a third down team. Like they just rely on their third down, whether it's a play calling, just a run up the middle, or Mahomes making a play and making magic happen on third down, because they can't create explosives. So they have more and more third and shorts. So that's kind of how they play. So they actually didn't play that well on third. They were 2 for 2 on fourth, which you also have to factor in. 1 was for a touchdown at the goal line. The Broncos were 7 for 13, though, which is actually a higher percentage on third down than the Chiefs had. The Broncos also outrushed the Chiefs. The Chiefs didn't run the ball that well. Kareem Hunt only had 2.5 yards per carry. Hunt was pretty good as a receiver in this game, though, on a few different swing passes, screen passes that, of course, the Chiefs always go to. It was 300 yards for the Chiefs to 260 to the Broncos. There was not a lot of yards out there in general. The Chiefs punted 4 times. The Broncos punted 5 times. The Broncos, of course, had more penalties. You know, the Chiefs somehow only have 10 yards in penalties in this game. Somehow. Nobody knows, but they did. Somehow. So, yeah, the way I see this game is I thought Bo Nix played really well. I thought the Broncos, they manufactured the football. I thought I was actually more impressed with the Broncos offense, their play calling, Sean Payton, Bo Nix, than the score indicated. I thought they actually moved the ball a bit against the Chiefs. They should have won this game with that field goal. They didn't. The Chiefs somehow win this game. And I think people are continuing. I mean, on that NBC broadcast, it was ridiculous. They wouldn't bring up the fact that they probably should have lost. Like, nobody was like, oh, the Chiefs, they got away with one this week. No. It was like, oh, look at how they won this game. Look at the situational prowess. It's like, bro, that's a fluke. Like, are you serious? They blocked a field goal. Like, are you kidding me? From 35 yards. How often does that happen? 1 out of 1,000? Like, come on, man. Like, really? Like, seriously? Like, this team to me is 2019 Patriots vibes. Like, yeah, they're undefeated, but they're doing it through defense. They're doing it through voodoo bullshit. They're not doing it through, like, anything fancy, anything fun. They're, like, kind of getting away with it. And they're playing against mostly bad to mid teams. They haven't played that many great teams this year. Like, when they played the Niners, they had none of their weapons. They played the Ravens in week 1. They played the Bengals, who are a one-dimensional team, and people think that was like a huge win, even though they should have lost. They played the Falcons, who are not like a great team, and they should have lost that game too. So when you look at their schedule, I mean, every team that was legitimately above average, they could have lost that game. Like the Ravens, there was a toe. The Bengals, they should have lost. Pass interference, bullshit. Falcons, pass interference not called, bullshit. The Chargers, they could have lost that game, but I would say that was kind of one of their better wins, I guess. They won 17-10. The Niners, that was probably their best win of the year, but the Niners didn't have any of their receivers, like, at all. So I don't know how good of a win that really truly is at the end of the day. And honestly, like, Mahomes didn't play well. They beat the Bucs in overtime. So, I mean, like, yeah, like, the Chiefs are, I just look at it, and yeah, they're undefeated, and yeah, they're the Chiefs. But if they were the Steelers, would we be talking about them the same way? Or would we be calling them kind of a fluky good team? I'm just saying. I'm just throwing that out there because they're playing like the Steelers, but they're not actually the Steelers. You know what I mean? Speaking of the Steelers, they won 28-27. You like that transition? That's why I get paid for this shit, bro. Grung spike the like button. 28-27 Steelers win. They are first in the AFC North, believe it or not, after 10 weeks. 28-27 over the Commandos. Russell Wilson, a little 14 for 28, 195, 3 tutties, 1 pick on the day, which was an arm punt to Jeremy Chin. An arm punt I had to describe in the chat. I don't know why people didn't understand what this was. It's when you throw the ball deep like a punt where you would punt it, but it's picked off. Now, unfortunately for Russell Wilson, Jeremy Chin can actually return the ball. By the way, Jeremy Chin, borderline Pro Bowl safety this year. That guy is legit. Just saying. He's playing unreal football. But going through the game, so my main thoughts on the Steelers and the Commanders. First of all, I thought the Steelers deserved to win this game. First of all, they had 70 more yards just from the box score alone. I thought their defense was the better defense in the game. I thought that Russ and Jaden were pretty similar in production. Russ had more touchdowns for what it's worth. He made more explosive passes, but less consistency in the offense, I would say. The Steelers, I thought, had more pressure on Jaden Daniels more consistently, especially early where they brought him down. I think the first 2 drives of the game, they got third down sacks. Cam Hayward had 2 of those sacks. What else? I thought Jalen Warren played fantastic. Statistically, not amazing, like 66 yards, but 4.7 yards per carry. He made some plays running, catching. George Pickens had another great game. That guy is a stud. 5 catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown. He had 1 catch where he made like 3 different people miss. I felt like it was 3 different people, and his touchdown was also pretty nuts. Every catch the guy makes is nuts. Terry McLaurin was nuts. 5 catches, 113 yards, including an amazing left sideline catch, double toe tap, and a slant for a deep play. Both of the biggest plays Jaden Daniels had were to Terry McLaurin, and they were because of Terry McLaurin. Okay? I did not think Jaden Daniels was great in this game. He was 17 for 34, which is a 50% completion percentage, and considering a majority of his completions were screens, bubble screens, or quick throws, I don't think that's very impressive. 68.5 passer rating. He also was limited on the ground. I think he only had like 5 yards rushing, 202 total yards, and a majority of his yards came from Terry McLaurin, yards after catch. He had a couple of throws, I think one to Zach Ertz down the seam or something. That was maybe one of his better throws. He had one like curl route to Noah Brown. Like not too many that I can really think of that were super impressive. But the game ends on a 4th down and 9 near the 50-yard line, getting to the Steeler 40, which would have set up potentially a game-winning field goal for the Commanders. I think the Steelers would have gotten the ball after. But Daniels throws the ball to Zach Ertz, and Ertz is just a little late to extend the ball over the line. It was super close and a great tackle. Great situational football by the Steelers. Just great understanding of where they need to be there to make that tackle. That being said, a little close, right? Daniels fit that ball in. It was a nice ball. I thought he kind of, instead of stepping into the pocket, he stepped backwards, which I think actually hurt the play. Because if you watch the play, he actually stepped too far back to make the throw. And then I think that took longer for the ball to get there, which impacted where the ball actually got to. So I think if Daniels actually just took the snap and, stepped forward and just threaded it through, I think that probably would have been a first down. I'm not going to lie about that. Eckler stepped up in the red zone with 2 tutties. The Steelers had one of the dumbest plays I've seen all year. They faked a punt from their own 10-yard line. It might have not even been their 10. It might have been their own 7. They faked a punt. The punter tried to throw to a wide open guy. I think it was the punter or the up back. I can't remember which guy it was, but wide open guy on the left because the Commanders, I guess they didn't have their assignment there or they tried to cheat, running back to cover the punt or whatever. And the Steelers snapped the ball and threw it out to the left. And it looked like it was maybe a check, by the punter where it's okay, we see this guy's wide open. We're going to check and throw for the first down, right? And the Steelers checked and they looked and they threw it. The guy was wide open and they just fucked it up. The guy threw a terrible pass and it was incomplete. It was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. They were up 7-0. They're at their own 7-yard line. And they gave the Commanders the ball for the game-tying score early in the game to give the Commanders momentum when they went 3 and out twice to start the game. It was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I thought Russ, played solid. Didn't make too many mistakes. I will say with Jaden, I didn't think he was too impressive. I didn't think he was too good. But I will say, just in terms of he just doesn't make a lot of bad plays. which is what I like about him. Like, his elusiveness allows him to get away with things. He's able to make things out of nothing. He's able to extend plays. He's able to throw it away because of his elusiveness. He has great composure. He was under duress a lot. And he just didn't make a lot of mistakes, which is nice to see. Okay? So that would be the positive with Jaden. These teams, to me, though, are kind of frauds. I'm not going to lie. Like, I feel like they're good but not great teams. Both, I think, will make the playoffs, but I think ultimately both will be one and done. I don't see the Commanders beating any team in the NFC playoffs. I don't think I would favor them, maybe over the Cardinals if they made the playoffs. Maybe. Because they did smack the Cardinals earlier in the year. But if the Niners are there in San Francisco, I would not favor them over the Niners, a battle-tested NFC playoff team. I would not favor them over the Vikings, I don't think, and that's a wild card team. I don't think I would favor them over the Eagles. I don't think I'd favor them over the Packers. I don't think I'd favor them over the Eagles, the Lions. Who else could potentially make the playoffs? That's pretty much it, right? Like, at this point in the NFC, like, who's making the playoffs? It's Lions, it's Eagles, it's Commanders, it's Niners or Cardinals, it's Vikings, Packers. I'm forgetting one, I think. I don't know. And Falcons or Bucks, as we went over already. So Falcons or Bucks, I think the Commanders could beat the Falcons or the Bucks. I would say that. But the Bucks, when healthy, I'm not sure. Because the Bucks beat them. Falcons, I think they could beat the Falcons. So again, I think the Commanders are a bit of like, they're a good, young, fun team. Actually, they're a little bit more experienced and older than you would think on defense, but especially, the guys they brought in, like Dante Fowler, Dorrance Armstrong, Bobby Wagner, Jeremy Chin. All these guys are veterans, right? Like Frankie Louvu. Like, some of these guys are in their 30s, okay? So they are a little bit more experienced than you would think. But I just think they're a little bit of a fraud. Red zone offense, fraud. Red zone defense, fraud. Run defense, fraud. Playing legit opponents, fraud. Like, I just think they're a little bit fraudulent. That's not to take away what they've done. That's not to take away Jaden Daniels being Rookie of the Year. All those things are facts. But I just think they're a little fraudulent. For the Steelers, mostly because of their strength of schedule, they haven't really played anybody that good. We know that Mike Tomlin has voodoo. I don't think their defense is as dominant as people think, and I think it's very, very good. It's one of the better defenses in the league, but I don't think it can just carry you to playoff wins against Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and, these quarterbacks, Lamar. Like, I think they would give teams good games, but I don't think they would beat them. I don't think they would beat the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens in the playoffs. The Texans, when they're healthy, in the playoffs. I don't think they'd beat the Texans. Who else? I think the Chargers and Steelers would be a field goal game. I think the Bengals and the Steelers would be interesting if the Bengals make it. The Broncos, I think the Steelers would win that game. But that's never going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. What else? That's pretty much it, right? So, yeah, I think the Steelers could beat, the Broncos, maybe the Chargers. I'm not even sure. I don't think I would pick them over the Bengals in a playoff game. I'm not even going to lie. So, yeah, the Steelers 28-27. I think it was kind of, and I spoke about it on my picks, I think it was kind of like two frauds playing in a game. But it was an interesting game. It was a good game. 28-27, the Steelers take it. What else? Bills over the Colts. This one's going to be a long one, guys. It feels like tonight. I don't know why I have so much to say. I just do. Bills 30-20. Bills get the job done. This was actually viewed as a trap spot potentially for Buffalo, but they win 30-20, and it was actually 30-13. The Colts scored with 1 second left. Touchdown. Who cares? Okay. But I think it was a little bit misleading. I don't think the Bills totally dominated this game. I think most of it came off of turnovers. I thought the Bills were able to capitalize on some mistakes from Joe Flacco, and their defense was very opportunistic through their pass rush, through their secondary. They fooled Flacco a couple times in pass coverage, and they got to him a couple times in their rush. The Bills do have a good defense, no doubt, but I thought that the game probably could have been closer. First of all, Flacco throws a pick six early in the game. Bills go up 10-0. The Colts actually respond. They go up 13-10. Then the Bills respond almost like, oh, the Colts, they're back in this game. Josh Allen's like, oh, okay, let's go. They score a touchdown. They score a field goal. Then they're back in control. Then, field goal, touchdown again. And then a touchdown late by the Colts. So going through the stats, Bills were 50% on third down, as typically they are with Josh Allen. 2 for 3 on fourth down. They actually did get stopped early in this game on fourth down, surprisingly. The Colts were not great on third down, 4 for 11, which they struggled last week. They struggled this week, 2 for 3 on fourth down. Jonathan Taylor had some big runs in this game. Again, the Bills' run defense showed up a little bit. Jonathan Taylor had one huge run, I think on like the second or third drive. 114 yards on 21 carries, 5.4 yards per carry, some explosives mixed in there. Joe Flacco, a lot of garbage time, so it's hard to really know because I didn't watch play-to-play this game, but I pretty much know what happened with the highlights and all that stuff. So 26-35, 272, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks for Joe Flacco. And there's going to be people out there again that's saying Anthony Richardson should play. Anthony Richardson should play. And I think you could argue he should play just for him to play, but I don't think you can argue that you would put him in and they would actually be better. I don't see it that way. I see it as Joe Flacco played the Bills and the Vikings. Right? We got to remember who he's played. Richardson was playing the Bears. And, or was that Flacco? I don't even know if he played the Bears. Who is he playing? Like, who did Richardson play that was any good? The Bears weren't even good. The Bears defense is kind of good, I guess, but their team is not good. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, okay? So let's remember who Flacco has played. He played the Bills. He played the Vikings, okay? Good defenses, good schemes, really tricky schemes, especially in pass defense. That's tough. Richardson would have probably thrown for 100 yards, right? The Colts probably get blown out in both games. But the Bills, once again, 400 yards. And I think the promising thing about the Bills here, they punted twice. They had too many penalties, 8 penalties. We kind of talked about this with the Niners. The Bills didn't play a perfect game. Far from it. But they capitalized on their turnovers, and they were injured. They didn't have Amari Cooper. They didn't have Coleman at receiver. Kincaid got hurt during the game, and they still won by 10 on the road against a team that was fighting for playoff position and still is kind of in the hunt, and a team that a lot of people thought was like a sharp upset. A lot of people were picking the Colts or picking the cover, and neither were even close to happening. So, yeah, I would give the Bills a lot of credit just for that alone. The Bills also had 4 sacks with their pass rush. And Josh Allen continues to play great football. He did have 2 picks in this game, but he had 280 passing yards. He had a rushing touchdown. He had I think, close to 50 rushing yards. So he put up, stats are kind of misleading. Watching the throws, he made some really nice throws. There was an amazing throw right before the half that set up a field goal for Bass right before the half. It was to Hollins, I think. It's an insane throw. He made a couple really nice throws to Knox. His rushing touchdown was nice. Josh is one of those guys that he usually has stats, but you kind of got to watch the throws because nobody makes more impressive throws on a weekly basis than Josh Allen. That's why he leads the NFL in big time throws. So the stats are a little misleading, but I thought some of his throws were insane stuff. Shakir is also one of my favorite underrated players in the league. Guy continues to be a baller. James Cook is a dog. I've never seen a guy slip the first tackle so often. I don't mean avoid. I don't mean juke. I mean literally slip through the guy. Like, he does it like every time. It's insane. Vikings beat the Jags 12-7. This was a wild game, okay? Because the Vikings should have won 28-7. Like, guys, let's just go through the stats, okay? 28 first downs, which might have been the most I've said today so far. The Vikings had 28 first downs. They scored 12 points with some kicker named Romo, okay? Literally, his name was Romo. The Vikings had 28 first downs. Jacksonville had 10, okay? They had 400 yards. The Jags had 143. The Vikings punted 2 times. The Vikings had 42 minutes of possession. 42. The Jags had 17. Why was this game close? Sam Darnold. He threw 3 picks. 2 were in the end zone. And I think all 3 might have been one of them was in Viking territory. 2 of them were in Jacksonville territory. 2 were like literally in the end zone. Darnold was awful to start this game, and he made a couple really bad decisions that just put his team in bad situations. Like, he's got to understand that they're playing Mac Jones and the Jags, and like, if it's not there, just kick the field goal. Like, take the points. You're going to win this game through your defense. Like, you don't got to force a ball into double coverage. Like, so that's why I'm kind of like dealing with a fraud syndrome for the Vikings, because I just feel like Darnold just makes these critical errors, these interceptions, takes bad sacks, fumbles, and I think the offensive line and the protection has certainly had something to do with that since they lost Christian Darrisaw. Mac Jones had an opportunity to start for Jacksonville in this game. He threw an awful interception to end the game that a lot of people saw already. I think that was a miscommunication with him and his receiver. He threw another bad interception earlier in the game. But, I mean, he was Mac Jones, 14 for 22, 111 yards. It was not a good game. 38 passer rating. For that one Patriot fan that comes in my chat every single week and says Mac is better than Drake, you are an idiot, sir. You are an absolute dummy, okay? Mac Jones, 14 for 22, 111, 38 passer rating. And, yeah, he made some nice throws. On third down, Gabe Davis, some quick throws to Evan Ingram, a nice little touch ball down the right sideline to Evan Ingram. He got a quarterback sneak touchdown. He was fired up. That was cool. It's nice to see Mac out there playing for his hometown team. That was cool. But, like, the offense was not good for Jacksonville. And the defense for the Vikings, once again, another week stacking on top of each other. Colts and Jags, one at home, one on the road, where they looked really good. Run defense was solid. ETN maybe had one good run. Hawkinson, 8 receptions, 72 yards. He really looked like himself in this game, converting, moving the chains. Jefferson, of course, making some plays. Addison had a great catch down the left sideline at one point in this game. Really impressive. But man, the game was only close because of the miscues of Sam Darnold. That was basically it, bro. Like, that's all I got to say. The Vikings also were penalized more often. But the Vikings should have won this game by way more. I mean, 28 first downs and 42 minutes of possession. That speaks for itself. They still cover 4.5, though, which was the early week spread, which is what we were dealing with. So, I mean, I know that 7 was like the end of the game. They did cover a teaser if you teased them as well. The Chargers and the Titans, not too much to say here, probably more than on the other 2 afternoon games, which were absolute shit shows. But the Chargers, they were kind of in jeopardy early. I actually thought Tennessee had a really good first half. Will Levis had a pretty good first half. And then the Chargers kind of chargered it. Harbaugh ball. They ran the ball. They had balance. Gus Edwards returned. He had 5.5 yards per carry. Dobbins was solid enough. And I think that having a partner for Dobbins is ideal because I don't think he can carry all the carries he's been getting. Herbert was very good in this game, despite the stats being a little underwhelming. 14 for 18, 164 and a touchdown. I thought, like, just from a quarterbacking perspective, very few bad throws, very good passing. I mean, darts everywhere. Good decisions with the ball, keeping the offense on task, getting the offense the lead. He scored a rushing touchdown as well, which was actually like a designed run, which was pretty slick and cool from Greg Roman. So he had 2 total touchdowns and then 164 yards passing. Not overwhelming stats. Quentin Johnston caught the touchdown. Pretty nice catch by him as well. He scores, I think, his 5th touchdown of the year. But they had more first downs. They were slightly better on third down, where I think the Chargers do need to improve on third down. I think the reason they're so bad on third down is because they don't have receivers, and teams can kind of like lock them up in that situation. So I'd be a little bit worried for Chargers fans against good defenses in those sort of situations. They had 309 total yards, which is actually decent against a Tennessee defense. That's pretty freaking good. 145 rushing yards, which is pretty impressive against the Titans. And they had 7 sacks on defense against Will Levis, which is a common theme. I mean, everybody kind of sacks Will Levis and the Titans 7 times. It's kind of what happens. And they did it. Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa like didn't really play as much as you would think in this game. Bud Dupree had 2 sacks, and the young kid had 2 sacks. I forgot his name. He has like a Samoan name or something. But the Titans, 9 penalties, 68 yards. 7 sacks allowed, 3 for 9 on third down. You're not going to win like that. Will Levis actually had 2 really impressive touchdown passes to Calvin Ridley. I thought Will Levis didn't play too bad. The only thing is he just holds on the ball way too long. Like, just holds on the ball way too long, and that kind of kills the offense. Tony Pollard had an effective day as a receiver and a decent day when he was asked to run the ball. I thought the Titans actually schematically in the first half did a good job offensively. In the second half, it fell off a map. Calvin Ridley is back. If you have him in fantasy, he's looking pretty good. 5 catches, 2 touchdowns, 84 yards. Once again, against a pretty good defense. Doing his thing. So, 27-17. Chargers win. Chargers glide to a victory. They were up, I think, 27-10 at one point. The game was pretty close, though. And I think the game, it was like 10-6 for the Chargers near the end of the first half. Herbert looked like he fumbled it for a touchdown, and Tennessee would have taken the lead going into halftime, 13-10. But they called it back, and I never heard the reasoning as to why. But to me, it looked 100% like a fumble, and it might have been a penalty. I'm not exactly sure why, but yeah, it was an interesting call there. That could have turned the tide of the game. But the Chargers do find another way to win another game that they should win, which is exactly what we haven't seen from the Chargers in the past. The other 2 games that I don't really need to talk about are the Eagles beating the Cowboys 34-6. Cooper Rush is awful. Trey Lance is even worse somehow, if that's possible. I mean, Trey Lance had 4 for 6, 21 yards and an interception. Cooper Rush had 40 yards. The Cowboys threw for like 60 yards in the game. Like, not even. They had 49 according to the stats. That is the worst I've ever seen in my life. That is fucking terrible. Like, I don't even know what to tell you. The offensive line couldn't block a soul, and that's why the Eagles are so impressive. Their secondary playing fast, tackling, hitting, covering, and their front 7 dominated the Cowboys. Rico Dowdle actually had a decent game. You know, some of it might have came near the end, but 4.4 yards per carry, 53 yards. CeeDee Lamb, I felt bad for him. He had 6 catches for 21 yards. 10 targets, and a couple of them he was wide open and he was just missed. Like, Cooper Rush was awful. Jake Ferguson did nothing. He got hurt in the game. Somehow the Cowboys manufactured 11 first downs, which I didn't think they did. I don't know how. Actually, the Cowboys probably should have been in the lead, believe it or not, in the second quarter, but they fumbled. Zeke fumbled the ball at like the 3-yard line, and that totally turned the tide of the game. So it was 7-0 Eagles. The Eagles were kind of stalling on offense in the first half. Aubrey kicks a field goal at 7-3. Cowboys are hanging in. Their defense is playing pretty well. Aubrey kicks another field goal at 7-6. Cowboys are driving for a touchdown, and then Zeke fumbles the ball. Eagles get the ball. They go down. They drive down late in the first half. Dallas Goedert, Jalen Hurts, broken play, touchdown. And then in the second half, Eagles take over. Defense dominates. Hurts gets a tush push or a run. And then Johnny Wilson with a nice touchdown. And that was all she wrote. But Saquon, not an overwhelming game for him, but a solid game, 66 yards on 14 attempts. Hurts, I thought, was terrible in the first half. Like, he couldn't see. He was throwing terrible passes. He was holding on the ball way too long. He only completed 14 passes, but he only had 20 attempts for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. His touchdown to Goddard was nice. His touchdown to Wilson was decent. But 4 for 11 on third down. The Eagles were on offense, which is not too effective. They pretty much were balanced. Rushing yards, 187. A lot of them coming from Hurts himself and Saquon. and Gainwell later in the game, they ran the ball a ton in the second half just to kill the clock because the game was so far out of reach. The fourth quarter, it was like 34 to 3 or something, or 6. Like, it was a total blowout by the fourth quarter, so it was over. But yeah, the Eagles totally dominate a terrible Cowboy team. They're bad. They might have a top 5 pick in the draft. I mean, they are really bad. The Cardinals shit kicked the Jets 31-6. Kyler Murray and the Cards are now 6-4, and they are first place in the NFC West right now. And they look like they could be a playoff team. Now, that being said, the Jets are bad. They lost the Patriots for a reason. They only play well on Thursday night, apparently. They allowed 28 first downs to the Cardinals. They allowed 400 yards to the Cardinals. And perhaps the best quarterback performance of any player all day, or at least one of them, 22 for 24, 266, and a touchdown from Kyler Murray, including 2 rushing touchdowns, 3 total touchdowns, 266 passing yards, including the rushing yards on top. Marvin Harrison had a touchdown. Trey Benson had a nice 6.2 yards per carry, crisp. James Conner was nice through the receiving game. Trey McBride dominated, in my opinion. And the Cardinals only faced 7 third downs in which they converted 5 of 7. That's really impressive. That means you don't even get to third down. The Cardinals also had 3 sacks on Rodgers. They made him look really old. He couldn't move. At one point, my dad screamed at the television saying, "I'm faster than Aaron Rodgers." The Jets only had 17 first downs, which isn't terrible. I mean, that's more than a team that we saw won today, I think. But only 200 total yards with those weapons, those players against this Cardinals defense is pretty embarrassing, in my opinion. Their offensive line was putrid. I don't know why Breece Hall doesn't run the ball more. I don't know why they don't get him the ball more. I don't know why they insist on being a pass-first team. The Jets actually only punted twice, but it was because they went for it on 4th down 3 times. They failed twice, including a strip sack fumble on a 4th down. And they were so far behind early that they kind of had to go for it. What else? Yeah, Cardinals impressive. Run game is really good, as we always talk about. Kyler was very efficient. The Jets defense is the most overrated defense in the league that I've seen in years. Their run defense is bad. Their coverage is basic. Their pass rush is overrated. Their effort is not high. Their scheme is simplistic. Their offense is annoying to watch. It's just fade balls and screens and swing passes and quick slants. Like, the Jets are bad. They're awful. They might be worse than the Patriots. Like, they're that bad. Speaking of the Patriots, we're going to finish it off with the Patriots shellacking the Bears. And literally, they dominated the Bears today. And that's embarrassing for any football team, getting dominated by the New England Patriots in 2024. The Bears are now 4-5. The Patriots are 3-7, and the Patriots won 19-3. And it could have been worse, honestly. It could have been worse. The Patriots let their foot off the gas. The Patriots could have scored in the red zone a couple times that they didn't. They had 4 field goals and a touchdown to Jalen Polk, who was wide open for 2 yards. Luckily, he caught it. I'm actually shocked. Jalen Polk. But that being said, going through it. So obviously through the Patriot lens, as a Patriots fan, majority of the people watching my channel probably Patriots fans. Drake May, again, not a great stat day for Drake. His rushing yards weren't as high as usual. He was 15 for 25, 184 yards, a touchdown, an interception, 78 passer rating or 79 passer rating. Not a great stat day, but I thought Drake was pretty good in the game. He made a really nice throw to Austin Hooper down the right side early in the game. He made a dart throw to Kayshon Boutte multiple times. He had a very good end of the first half 1-minute drive to get into field goal range. It was expertly done. He is very good at avoiding sacks, avoiding pressure. So good throwing on the run. I think he's already like a top 5 throwing on the run quarterback in the NFL. Some of the throws he makes. And then he just makes big boy throws pretty frequently. He got away a couple times. He could have thrown some picks. One in the end zone to Hicks comes to mind where he got away with one. He still has those subtle inaccuracies at times that I don't love to see, but as a rookie, the interception was boneheaded. Like, he just tried to get away with something. He tried to throw it over TJ Edwards' head, and TJ Edwards was like, "Nah, kid, you're not going to do that to me," and he picked it off. I see what he was trying to do, but it was awful, right? The Patriots actually ran the ball in this game way better than usual. Stevenson only had 3.7 yards per carry, but he did have 74 yards, and that just kept the offense on schedule, and it allowed Drake to stay out of third and longs pretty frequently, which the Patriots were 5 for 14 on third down, and that kind of includes a couple third downs at the end of the game. They weren't really trying. And Gibson ran it a little bit later in the game. I thought Hasty, he was okay as well running the ball. But the Patriots had 144 rushing yards total in the game, which was huge because the Bears only had 73. Patriots stopped the run pretty well against DeAndre Swift, only 59 yards rushing, 3.7 yards per carry. And the Bears were 1 for 14 on third down, guys. 1 for 14. They had 142 total yards. They had 69 passing yards against the Patriots defense, who I've been ripping apart all year. They're awful. They punted 8 times in this game. 8 times against the Patriots. Caleb Williams was awful. I can't explain to you. 16 completions for 120 yards. He missed it had to be 8 first downs. He just flat out missed the throw. He just missed the guy open on for a first down. It's just what? That was terrible. What is he doing? Held on the ball way too long in certain situations, especially early in the game. The play calling was putrid. Predictable screens, predictable swing pass plays, predictable motion setting up a screen that you could see coming from a mile away, run play calls that were obvious, moving the pocket so frequently where they're cutting off the entire field and none of it worked. Their best offense was just the quick routes to Keenan Allen. That was basically their best offense. He had 5 catches for 44 yards. That was their best offense the entire game. They would have been better off just throwing quick slants and quick outs and option routes to Keenan Allen and running the ball with DeAndre Swift the entire game. That was pretty much all they had the entire game. Austin Hooper actually had a great game. 3 catches for 64 yards. He made some nice catches in this game. Kayshon Boutte played really well. Demario Douglas played well. The Patriots O-line was solid in this game. Patriots had 9 sacks. I forgot to bring that up, but they sacked Caleb 9 fucking times, which is insane. And a lot of it had to do with Caleb holding the ball or someone not getting blocked on a blitz or something like that. It's not like the Patriots were overwhelming them individually. The Bears were so bad in this. This was one of the worst performances I've seen all season. And Drake May is so much better than Caleb. It's not even close. Imagine what Drake would be doing with those receivers. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet. I mean, come on. This guy's throwing a Kayshon Boutte and Jalen Polk. Hunter Henry didn't even do anything in this game. The Bears have the better defense. And the Patriots were moving the ball. I was impressed. They were moving the ball in this game. They could have put up closer to 30 points. If they had a little bit better red zone offense, this team could have scored 30 points against a good Bears defense on the road in Chicago, which I don't think a single team this year has scored more than, let's just look at Chicago at home this year. Patriots scored 19. They could have scored 30. I swear to you, watching the game. So they, at home, they allowed 10 to Carolina, 18 to Matthew Stafford and the Rams, 17 to the Titans. This was the most points that the Bears have allowed at home the entire season. Maybe the most yards, too. So, yeah, good on Drake May, good on the Patriots. That is your Week 10 review, guys. Great week for the picks, it looks like. Excellent week for Patreon. And fun week of football. Let me know what you guys thought in the comment section below. It was a long review. Gronk, spike the like button and subscribe. It's Mitch. Peace.